Thank you so much for joining us today for the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. Here on the Pastor's Potluck, it's similar to a normal potluck where you might get something that you want and there may be something that you just want to pass up altogether. And that's okay. There's something here for everybody. Our goal here is to encourage you and maybe in the process entertain you. If you're ready, let's dig in. Oh, it's raining today. I'm so excited.
I know. So today is Terry's birthday, and she is getting a massage today. So she sent me a picture earlier, and I guess like the place that she's at is right across from the baseball field downtown. It's got this big bay window and these big, long, like reclining couches that you can sit in while you're waiting for your turn. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I said, girl, all you need is a blanket.
Yes.
It is raining and you're getting a massage and you look like you're in your pajamas. And she's like, I would be out. And I'm like, I know I would be asleep because rainy days are my favorite days.
Dude, I
love rainy days.
And we've needed it so badly here. I mean, it has been...
Today is like a good fall day.
Yeah.
Like I walked out the house this morning and I was like, yes, I can get down with this weather.
It's not technically fall though.
I know,
right?
it's not.
Yeah, it was
not
good.
until next week, maybe, I think. I don't know.
I just want something to kill all the yellow jackets.
Oh my, they're awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
I got to show you this picture of this trap that we have. It's insane. But yesterday, my youngest daughter, Ryan, she does cheerleading for like the little 10U football team. And so myself and Olivia, my oldest daughter, went and watched the JV football game at Hoover.
Yeah.
While Ryan was cheering, like just on the next field over, like doing their practicing and stuff. And we were just standing there because I didn't want to sit down because I didn't have my comfy bleacher seat. So we were just standing in the back.
Right.
I killed 16 yellow jackets with my hat. Like, you know, because they fly around you and they hover around. So I just swat them down and then step on them. But
they're really bad this year.
I'm excited for the rain because I'm hoping that it just fills up all their little nests and they all die.
They've been awful.
Yeah, it's
like
bad.
At the pool this summer, we had so many kids get stung because of the yellow jackets. We went through probably, I don't even know how many boxes of that like bee sting stuff that you get. Like we went through so many boxes of that this summer. We had one little boy, I think his mom said he got stung like 4 or 5 times this summer. I'm like, what? And every time at the pool, I'm like, golly, what is happening? Why does this poor thing keep getting stung?
Yeah.
Every time we turn around, he was petrified. They'd even just fly near him and he'd start screaming and crying.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's where most kids or most people develop fears of things is whenever you're a child, you know, like it's crazy, you know, like wasp and stinging insects and flying things and all that stuff. And yeah, you just whatever. But is there like any type of music that you listen to? Like because I found this morning whenever it was just kind of sprinkling and everything, like I went for like a really like laid back album of music this morning to listen to. And I was like, this is like really good. You know, just like, it wasn't like sad or sappy, but it was just like, okay, this is like good, relax, rain weather music.
I like to listen to like old school country on days like this. Like, I don't know why. It's just my go-to. Like,
and the thunder rolls.
Ooh, that is a good one. Boom, boom, boom.
I know.
But no, I had.
I'm so mad at him. Garth Brooks, because he needs to put his music on Apple Music.
I know you can't stream any of his stuff. You can't stream it on Spotify either.
Because I get it. He wants people to listen to the whole album from start to finish.
I would.
Yeah.
I would. But it's not the same when someone does a cover of it.
No. We were at Dollar General the other day, and I bought the last one. Every single album of his I got on vinyl for $20. It was like
what?
It was a pack. Every single one.
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
That's a good deal.
I know. The DG came through that day.
Yeah. No, I like to like the 90s country. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I had some John Michael Montgomery on this morning.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
That's all Erica listens to.
Yeah.
Hey, Siri, play
feel-
90s country.
I feel your Siri's going to start playing it, or at least mine probably will.
No, I turned that feature off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I feel like my summer playlist is all over the place, but then like fall comes or this weather starts to change and I'm like, give me my country, give me my like,
Yeah.
you know, chill music. I like Tyler Childers, so I'll listen to some T Childers a lot too.
Yeah.
On rainy days like this. But this morning it was John Michael Montgomery and Lone Star were on this morning, and that was the playlist that I was rocking on the way to work.
Yeah. The album that I was listening to was the first album by Coldplay, Parachutes.
Okay.
And it's just real chill. It's laid back. You know, they don't
Yeah.
get like crazy or anything like that, but it fit the mood for myself and Olivia driving to school this morning. And I was like, this is pretty good rain weather music. She's like, I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
So
it's like a pajamas and blanket and movie day. That's what I'm going to do when I get home today. Pajamas, blanket, couch, movies. That's it. I can't wait.
that, and I think Erica wants to make like chicken salad for dinner.
I haven't thought the dinner part yet, but I've thought what I'm going to do before dinner.
You're like, I'm just going to eat popcorn to...
Going to just sit there and do nothing all day.
Yeah. Yeah, and really wish that like I didn't have to get up or move for the next several days.
Oh my goodness.
We're just in dire need of rain.
This is so crazy. I don't know why this made me think of this, but when you said that just now. So Sunday after church, I had the worst headache like all day long. And I had taken Tylenol that morning, like ibuprofen, whatever. It didn't cut it. It was not working. And I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I just need sleep. So of course I didn't get a nap.
Yeah.
But then I came back here and had life group. So I came early, and cause normally I go to Terry and Kenneth's, but their youngest had the stomach virus. So we went to lunch, we went shopping at Gabe's, and then I came back here. And I went into the modular and I was taking my nap, and I woke up and I still had, because that's where my group meets.
Yeah.
So I still had a headache. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had caffeine. I've had Tylenol. Like nothing is kicking this. So of course at like 11:30, this headache is still not gone away. So I'm currently house sitting, and the only thing that they had was Tylenol PM. Have you ever taken Tylenol PM?
I think once or twice.
That stuff will jack you up. I slept so hard.
Yeah.
I could not physically keep my eyes open yesterday. It was awful. I got here yesterday.
Well, I think it was just like, it may have been a combination of that, but I think it was just the weather starting, like it's really changing and we're feeling it.
My eyes, like
I fell asleep in my chair.
I felt like I needed to like toothpicks to hold my eyes open yesterday. I felt like my body, like my arms weighed 1,000 pounds. Like it was awful. And I was telling Aaliyah, and she goes, oh no, that my grandma's taken that before, and it's like knocked her out hardcore. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna ever do that again. It was rough. I had took an hour nap after work yesterday.
Oh my goodness.
I could not function. It was awful.
Yeah, no, that does sound...
It was awful. It knocked me out more than Benadryl ever has. I can tell you that much.
I know.
It took my headache away.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Whenever you take a coma like you did, that's what it sounded like.
I was out.
You didn't take. You didn't go to sleep.
I don't think I moved all night long.
Yeah.
I was in the same spot yesterday morning that I was when I laid down Sunday night.
Oh my goodness.
I'm dead serious. I don't think I moved at all.
Yeah.
I was out.
Are you a side sleeper?
Yes.
So I'm a side sleeper, but I always wake up like flat on my back.
Yeah.
I don't, because I don't know. It's weird because I can't fall asleep on my back.
Yeah.
Can't do it. But I always wake up on my back. Yeah. I don't know. Dude, my ADD is so strong right now because like we keep on talking about things, and I have to keep on saying, don't go down that road. Don't go down that road.
It's these rabbit holes.
Dude, it is these rabbit holes.
It's the squirrel from Up. Like the dog when he's like, squirrel, That's what it made me think of just now.
I know. I need to be more laser focused, like the squirrel from Ice Age. Like I just need to have the acorn on my mind, and that's it. So
we're chasing the acorn now. All right, let's get back on track. Ready, go.
Go. Motivational interviewing.
Yes.
So I got a lot of compliments from our episode last week. And I'm excited to kind of dive deeper into a little bit of this conversation because this is like, okay, this is a practical next step.
Yeah.
This is like, okay, we got the information. Like, okay, now we're getting into the nitty gritty. We're getting into the meat and potatoes. We're getting into another analogy inserted right there. And I'm excited about this because it is super, super important. Not only for adults and their faith journey, but even more importantly for kids in their faith journey. Because we all know that we're supposed to share the gospel. We're supposed to... You okay there?
Yeah, I'm just getting situated.
Am I sitting?
I felt like I was really short, so I had to sit on my legs.
You're fine. And so it's not... Like I was saying, it's not only important for us as adults because it does give us a little bit of a window of stuff that we're supposed to be doing. And talking to our kids about Jesus, but also how do we share the gospel with kids as well?
Yeah.
For me, I think I can put it better in terms like the gospel presentation and better for maybe an adult to understand as opposed to a kid.
Okay.
I don't know. I think that people who are called in the kids ministry they're supposed to be where they are at. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So obviously, what before we get into like that, what does like a typical week look like in terms of ministry for our kids ministry?
Yeah.
And kind of like set up the scene of like where these conversations come about for you to have with the kids.
Yeah. So it's funny because I literally was just talking about this yesterday. So Aaliyah and I are getting ready to go to a conference next week, and we were going through like the conference like breakouts or whatever, and there's all these breakouts about, like how to be a dynamic teacher or how to do this or how to do that or, whatever. And so I was talking to her about it, and I said, we do this very well at Southridge. I said, we kind of got this like way of kind of presenting things of, just that are a little bit, I don't want to say different, but a little more catchy. You know what I mean? Like we talked about it a little bit last week with like our journey through John stuff. Like you've got this story that you kind of can bring and convey that kind of brings people in. And I feel like for me, at least, I would much rather be back there with those kids telling them about Jesus than to be out here with adults telling them about Jesus. I am more comfortable back there. I'm more comfortable in smaller groups and things like that. But like we literally were just having this conversation yesterday because Aaliyah and I were talking this a few weeks ago, and she's like, sometimes I feel like I struggle like talking to the kids, like teaching them. And I'm like, that should be the easiest ones to teach. Like, because they're just ready and willing to listen. And so it's really cool. But like, so for instance, on Sunday, we are going through, we're in a series right now with our kids called Lead the Way. So we've been talking about, Moses, and he's, gone, and his mom has put him in the basket, and now he's been taken by Pharaoh's daughter, and now he's got into some trouble, and now he has fled, and he has gone, and there was a bush that was on fire, and God talked to him through this bush and told him, like, hey, guess what? You're going to be the person that's going to set my people free. And Moses is like, I'm not very good at talking. I've got all these things that no, I can't do that. And so he's been in that part of his, like, I'm not equipped for this type mentality. And God's like, yeah, well, actually, you're still going to do this. Like, I'm going to give you your brother, and your brother's going to be your mouthpiece. But this is what you're called to do, and this is what you're going to do. And so, now we're picking up. That was week 1. And then week 2, we picked up where now we're back in Egypt, and he's going to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's like, Moses is like, hey, Pharaoh, let my people go. And Pharaoh's like, no. And Moses is like, yeah, like if you don't do this, there's going to be consequences. So then we get the plagues, there's consequences. So now we're like, this past week, we're in like this last part where like finally this last plague hits. It's the death of the firstborn. And, we talked about this specific thing. We talked about that week, which was not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before. We talked about like in that this death of the firstborn was this final plague. And sometimes when you talk about death with kids, like it can be a lot. But we talked in that Sunday, we talked about it. And I said, here's what was really cool. I said, God told Moses, like, the Israelites are my people. They're my chosen people. And what we want you to do, Moses, is tell them that they need to take the blood of a lamb, and take that blood around the door frame. And I had, on my table, I had all the, like, we had representation of the plagues on my table. We've been calling them artifacts because we're on a jungle cruise expedition.
Yeah.
And so I had a can of red food coloring that was water. And I took the cotton ball out of it and I draped it over the door. And I said, they were told to take this blood and drape it over the door. And it was going to happen when that final plague came and death came to take the firstborn. It would pass over the houses of the Israelites and death would not come to them. And I said, they had to sacrifice a lamb and put that lamb's blood above their door. And I said, and do you know what happened years later? Jesus was that lamb whose blood was spilt for us so that sin and death could pass over us. And so that those things could pass us because Jesus took that for us. He took that death for us.
Yeah.
And so kind of like trying to explain that to them, but actually showing them that visualization. And then this past week, we talked about Moses and God and how they parted the Red Sea and how like God was literally with them. He was a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. It wasn't that he just provided those things. It says that God was a pillar of fire by day or by night and a pillar of cloud by day. He was with them in those moments. And so he went with them through that journey. And then he, of course, we part the Red Sea and they walk across. And then there's times, and this is what we told the kids on Sunday. And I told them, I told the kids, I said, there are times in our lives where we are walking and we get to the edge of something and we're like, uh-oh, I don't know how I'm going to cross this. Said, have you guys ever been on a bear hunt? Have you ever been on a bear hunt? Do you know what I'm talking about? And they're like, no. And I said, like going on a bear hunt, I'm not afraid. And then you say, can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it. We're going to have to go through it. And I said, well, guess what? That's what happened to the Israelites. They get up and these bad guys, the Egyptians, are coming after them. And I said, and they get up there to that water and they're looking at Moses and they're like, what am I going to do? And Moses is like, can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it. We're going to have to walk through it. And we're going to have to just trust that God's going to get us through. And I said, so Moses did just that. He stretched his staff out and God got them all the way through. And as they're walking through, there's all of this water. I said, could you imagine walking through? Like there's water on this side, there's water on that side, there's fish swimming around. And I said, and guess what? That's kind of what our life looks like sometimes. Even as kindergartners, that's sometimes what our life looks like. Sometimes we get up there and we're scared and we're afraid and we don't know what to do. We don't know what our new school is going to be like. We don't know what mom and dad, like the relationship with mom and dad is going to be like. We don't know if mom's going to pick us up today or if we're going to see dad tomorrow. We don't know if there's going to be something bad that happens at school. And so we get in that and we step out and we trust that God's going to see us through it. And we get to the other side and then the waves crash and God is taking care of it because that's what God does. He takes care of those things. And so knowing our kids in our classrooms here at Southridge, and even within your homes, like, you know your kids well enough to be able to tell those stories to them and truly put that practical what is the word? Practical implementation.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the right word, but practically implementing those things into that. Yeah, that was right. It just was coming out weird. But those practical things that are in their lives that, like, they can truly understand. They don't understand, like, things that we talk about in, like, big church, you know, like, they don't understand the addictions and the, you know, those things like that, but they understand the bully on the school bus. They understand that mom and dad are fighting all the time, and that mom and dad are getting a divorce. They understand that mom is gone all the time, or that dad hits me, or that I don't know where my next meal is coming from, or I'm moving and I don't know what that looks like. They understand mom is sick. They understand that grandma passed away. Like, so they understand those things. Mm-hmm. And for little ones, those are big emotions. Those are big things that they don't understand, or that they're going through.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't understand what that means or why that's happening, but they can trust in what we're teaching, that God is going to be there. So like on Sunday, our bottom line was God leads the way to safety. Yeah. God is going to lead us to safety. He's going to lead the way. And it tells us in that, in that story too, it says, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still.
Yeah.
Like, we just have to be still, and we just have to trust that. And so, like, we talked about that with the kids on Sunday. Like, life is not rainbows and butterflies. Yeah. I'm very open with our kids about that. And maybe that's not like a PC politically correct type thing, but like, our kids need to understand that life is not rainbows and butterflies just because we go to church, just because we decide to follow Jesus. Tough things are going to happen. Yeah.
Now, through the conversations and stuff that you are having with these kids, I think that one of the great things that happens is there's more of a focus on an individual basis, as opposed to, let me just do a blanket statement and see who wants to accept Jesus.
Yes. No, that's not that. We don't do that.
Yeah. And that's what I appreciate, because you can actually sit down and have a really good conversation with a child that may be expressing that, hey, I kind of want to know a little bit more about like this and what it means to follow Jesus. Like, we keep on saying that Jesus is in my heart. Like, how do I know that he's there? And like, how do you approach those conversations like with these little children that do want to, accept Jesus?
Yeah. Well, the first thing,
Savior.
The first thing we do is we don't say that Jesus lives in our heart.
Yeah.
We say that we are accepting Jesus into our lives. And we talk a lot with the kids too, that like, when Jesus, anything that comes in contact with Jesus changes. Mm-hmm. And we can give examples of that. You think about the lady who touched the hem of his robe. She was changed instantly. Yeah. Like the man who was blind, the people who were lowered through the ceiling, that man was healed. Like, anything and anyone who came in contact with Jesus was changed in some way. The woman at the well was changed in some way. And that is what my conversation looks like a lot of times when I'm having those conversations with kids. Like, for instance, I had a conversation a couple weeks ago. I had a parent come up to me and tell me that their child was interested in baptism. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, let me talk with them, make sure that they're like really ready and that they understand like why we're getting to that point. And so I talked to the child and I said, hey, so, parents said that you were interested in getting baptized. Like, that's awesome. That's great. But I have a question for you. Yeah. Okay. What is it? And I said, so my question for you is this. Have you made the decision to follow after Jesus? Have you made the decision to ask Jesus into your life? I pray the same thing every night. Oh, okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Yeah, I pray. And literally this child recited a prayer, basically something along the lines of like, Jesus, be with me, forgive me for all the things that I've done. Whatever. Amen. I said, okay. I said, that's awesome. That's great. But have you made an actual decision to have Jesus come into your life and change your life.
Yeah.
Like praying, God, forgive my sins. That's great. That's great. But have you made a decision to say, Jesus, I want you to come into my life and change everything?
Mm-hmm.
Like change the way I talk, change the way I treat other people, change. Like I had this same conversation with another kid, I've had this conversation with probably 5 or 6 kids in the last couple weeks, but another kid that I was talking to, and I told him, I said, listen, I said, when we make that decision to follow Christ, we're saying, Jesus, I want you to come in and I want you to change the way that I talk. I want you to change the way that I treat other people. I want you to change the way I treat my brother, treat my sister, treat my mom, treat my dad. Like, I want you to change the things that I listen to, the things that I watch, the things that I, say when no one else is around, or, whatever. I said, because as we're getting older, we get in middle school, we get in, 4th, 5th grade, middle school, like we're starting to get tempted with more and more things. I said, and it's easy to put other things above God. And I said, but when we make that decision to follow after Christ, he has to be the number one thing in our life.
Yeah.
We have to put him above everything else. And so when I was talking to the one little one, they couldn't give me an answer of when they had actually asked Jesus to fully come in and accept that, I told him, I said, we say that is salvation. And I said, it means, asking Jesus to truly come into our lives and change us.
Yeah.
And I said, have you done that? I don't think so. I mean, I just pray every night, forgive me for my sins, but that's it. That's all I do. And I said, okay. And I said, well, that's the first step is truly understanding that you have a decision that you need to make.
Yeah.
And that decision is to follow Christ. It's not just a, hey, forgive me of my sins. It's a complete change of your life.
Yeah.
And what that looks like. And I said, so it sounds to me like maybe you and mom need to have some more conversations about what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I said, because once we take that step in our faith journey of asking Jesus to come in and be Lord and Savior of our lives, then we take that step of getting baptized and letting other people know that, hey, we're on Team Jesus. Like we want other people to know that we're a part of that. And so normally if kids can tell me, like I had a little one recently, I asked the same question, like, hey, Dad says that you're interested in getting baptized. Yes. Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, have you made the decision to follow Jesus? I did. I actually asked Jesus into my life. Okay. Tell me a little bit about that. When did you do that? What did that look like? And they said that it was at Christmas this past year. And I said, oh, what an awesome Christmas gift.
Yeah.
I said, that's amazing. I said, can you tell me what happened? And she was like, yeah. She said, it was at Christmas, and I was sitting in front of the Christmas tree, and I just prayed, and I was asking Jesus to come into my life. And I just felt like I needed to ask Jesus to come into my life and to save me. And I said, that is awesome. I said, what a great Christmas gift. I said, that is like the coolest thing ever. And she was like, yeah. And I'm so glad that I did. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. And so like, just to have that conversation, but to know that like she could actually tell me that she had made that decision. Like I've had conversations with kids where they're like, I love Jesus. I love Jesus too, but have you made him Lord and Savior of your life? There's a difference. Yeah. Like there is a difference in that. And so like not pushing that aside and saying, nope, sorry, you're not ready. Yeah. But more of a, you know what? I am so excited that you're starting to question those things, but let's dive more before we take that next step and make sure that we truly understand what it means to follow after Jesus.
How many times have you gone down a flight of stairs and you think that you took a step and you missed a step completely and made it to the next one and then you tumble down? You have to kind of like approach these conversations with your children in a similar manner. Like, hey, let's one step at a time. Yeah. Let's make sure that where we are planting ourselves is right and correct, because it literally is the foundation for everything else that you are going to learn in and on your faith journey. Right. If you can get this right, then everything will come like better. Like so it's harder. you can't explain that to a kid because they won't get it. But for the adults that do listen to this, it is one of those things that you have to get the process of salvation and understand that it's not necessarily just a one and done event, but it's a daily.
The Bible tells us you have to take up our cross daily and follow after him.
Correct. Salvation is something that is constantly happening.
Yeah.
Yes. And so just having that good discussion and foundation for the kids to like fully grasp and begin to understand is going to set them up for success, because we can all say, oh, I said a prayer.
Yeah.
I repeated after whatever the person on stage was saying.
Well,
and I think that there's nothing wrong with that. If there's a genuine belief with that, but there
has to be a step in that too. Like, I feel like there's nothing wrong with those things. Absolutely. But there also has to be some sort of like next step. Like, what does that look like? Yeah. What are the practical ways that you're making that change, or, you know, fill in the blank? I grew up in church. My dad was a pastor, and I couldn't tell you how many times I probably had said the prayer of like, Jesus, come into my life and blah, 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 blah. But I was in 9th grade when I know that I, for myself, made a decision to follow after Christ. I was at a conference. It was called Nazarene Youth Conference in Toronto, Canada. And we were listening to a speaker from Texas, Rick Rigsby, was speaking, and he was talking about missing your moment. He said, so many times we go through life and we think that we're following after Christ because we're not doing bad things. We're not doing this. We're not doing X, X, Y, and Z. But we miss the moment. We miss the fact that we've just grown up in church, or we've, played church, or we've done these things. And he's like, you're going to miss your moment. Don't miss your moment. And I remember standing there with like thousands of other teenagers, and it was like, Jess, this is it. Like, you have never fully 100% said, I'm following after you. Make it. Don't miss your moment today. It's not that you're not going to have other moments, but right now in this moment, don't miss it. Yeah. And so that was when I remember fully taking that step of like, hey, I want to follow after Christ, and I want this to be my decision. And it wasn't something that I made when I was 3 or 4 or 5 years old, but I know that those things were placed in my heart at an early age. I know that those prayers were prayed at an early age, but I also know that in 1999, I made a decision to fully, completely surrender my life to Christ. Yeah. And so, but it's cool because like, I can remember that. I remember that day very well. Like, don't miss your moment. That was my moment. And I know, like, when I was speaking to that little girl a couple weeks ago, like, that was her moment. Yeah. Like, she could literally tell me, like, I sat there in front of that Christmas tree and I just started praying to Jesus, and I asked him into my life, and it was the best day ever. And I'm like, when you can tell me, like, where you were and what you were like, there's going to be times where I don't remember much else about that day. I couldn't tell you what day it was. I couldn't tell you, what I was wearing. I just know that, like, in that moment, I was told not to miss my moment, and I didn't want to miss it, and I didn't. And I'm thankful for that. But I couldn't tell you much else about it. You know what I mean? Like, but I know that I was in the 9th grade. I know that I was in Toronto, Canada. I couldn't tell you the date, time, blah, blah, blah. But I know that that's what happened.
Yeah, for me, it was just like a culmination of just a life of addiction and all of that. And I don't remember what day it was. I just remember sitting in a church going, I feel like I've just been spinning my wheels for years. Like, I'm stuck in the mud, and God, I need you. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I just need something. Yeah. I need you to meet me right here. Give me something. Yeah. Give me some kind of hope, and obviously no sign came, but I just remember that day as like a turning point, because I was so frustrated with my life. I was so frustrated at so many decisions that I had made, and I'm grateful that I did grow up in church because I kind of sort of remembered where I should be, you know, turn into
foundations. You had those foundations, and it's because of conversations that you have with people. Like, I remember those conversations that I had with people growing up in church, like the Doris Shanks and the Barbara Keys and, you know, fill in the blanks. Like, I remember having those conversations with those people who are, for me, like those clouds of witnesses, you know, that came before and like set that precedence for what I needed in those moments. And I knew in, you know, when I was a kid that I loved Jesus and that I was following after Jesus, but it came a time, and like I said, I was in the 9th grade when I fully, truly understood what that meant for me. But I don't think that, like, that doesn't mean that a 3rd grader or a 1st grader can't fully know what that means to follow after Christ. Yeah. It just means that, like, we're setting up this, like, these are foundations that we're setting. Yeah. Like, we can't be built on that shaky sand. Like, we have these foundations that are being set. Yeah. And it's the way in which I think that we communicate with people that helps people take those next steps to fully really understand what that means.
But I also think it's like the people that the individual is surrounded by as well. Yeah, yeah. Which is super crucial, because like you started naming off names, and literally there's been 3 or 4 people or couples that I know that if they would have looked at me in a different way because I was sitting in church hungover or drunk or high, I probably would have never stepped foot back into a church. I knew that, like, there was still guilt that I was feeling, because I was like, oh, dang, dude, I'm sitting in church and I'm like the last alcoholic beverage I just had was 30 minutes before this church service started. So I know I stunk like an ashtray. I know I smelled like a lush. Yeah. But those people, you know, that come up and they just say, hey, you know what? It's so good to see you. Yeah. Like, you know, I've been praying for you.
And think about that as a kid. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, like, even though like my situation is very, 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 very drastically different from what a kid could be going through, but not undermining what they are going through. Exactly. And just saying, you know what? I've been thinking about you. I'm praying for you.
And
like, is there something that you can talk about? Yeah. Like, or like, you know, do you want to go have lunch? You know, obviously we can't do that with kids because that's just weird. But like, you know, like, let's go hang out with your family. Let's go do, you know, just whatever that is, just to be a positive role model. And it doesn't matter if it's an adult or a kid's life, because God Almighty, I mean, I can't imagine if Dave and Terry Johnson looked at me one Sunday and they just said,
see you later.
To hell with them, because that's what church people do. Yeah. Yeah. Whenever we start treating this place like a stinking country club, and we want to look down on people. I get frustrated whenever it happens here. I get frustrated whenever it happens anywhere. And I'm just like, that's the wrong approach, especially if you're trying to do that with kids, you know.
Well, like, because I know what I was just getting ready to say too, like, especially with kids, because we do have kids that come from so many different backgrounds and so many different, like, home lives and things like that. And it's like, you just think, I don't know, my brain immediately goes to like you and your family right now are in like you're doing foster care. And so, like, it would be very easy for someone to be like, oh, you're in foster care? Okay, well, I'm not going to build a relationship with you because you're not going to be here very long. Yeah. But you all did have a foster child recently. Yeah. I loved that child.
Oh, she was great.
She was amazing. Like, she was the best. But it would have been very easy for people to be like, oh, she's going to be temporary. You know what I mean? Like, not, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean, like, okay, well, I'm not going to pour time or pour energy into this because she's only going to be here for a limited amount of time. Yeah. No, like, I'm going to go all in. Like, I'm going to show her the same amount of love and care that I'm going to show to anyone else, and have those same conversations. And so, but I think something too that is important when we talk about faith with kids is not one. I think it is important. This is just me, but I do think it is important to let them, like, to let them understand that there are going to be tough times.
Yeah.
Because I do think growing up, I mean, for me at least, I know I experienced tough things. I know I did. I can remember I was in the 3rd grade when we had a very close family friend who was killed, who was murdered. And so like as a 3rd grader, that was big. That was a lot of emotions that I went through that I, didn't know how to fully process. That was not my first run-in with death by any means. And so it was hard and I didn't fully understand it or comprehend it, but it was something that, because I had adults in my life that were there that I could talk to when I was scared about it. I do think that I was able to handle that in a very positive way.
Yeah.
But because of that, I think that those things like that, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. My brain is, there's things in our lives that we experience that, like that death, or, the death of a grandparent, or, whatever, choosing hard things, or, whatever the case may be. There are things that happen in our lives that I think that sometimes, I just had this conversation with Aaliyah, sometimes we shy away from those things when sharing them. Like we shy away. We don't want people to know that this has happened. We don't want people to know that that's happened. We don't want people to know that we experienced this or we experienced that. Oh, I don't want people to know that my friend's mom was murdered. That's awful. Like that's not something we're going to talk about. Life is rainbows and butterflies. But it's not. Like life is tough. In this world we will have trouble. But take heart, he has come to overcome that. I mean, Pastor Brett talked about that on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Like we're going to have hard things that happen. And it's in those times, like, do we have that system of support that can come alongside us and give us that push that we need to like truly understand that when the storms are raging, when the things happen, when the tough times are going on, do we have those people that we can come to and lower us through the roof like that guy's friends did, that are going to be there and bring us to Jesus. And so like we've actually talked to the kids about that. Like you can bring your friends to Jesus. Your friends can bring you closer to Jesus. We can share our stories. Like the curriculum that we use has a couple of key components. And one of those is we can share our gifts. We can spend time with God. We can share our stories, and we can bring others, or others can lead us to Christ, and we can lead others to Christ. And it's basically about spending time with others. Yeah. And like, but sharing our stories are important because it's in those moments that we find that similarity. Like I had that conversation a few weeks ago with a 6th grader who has taken that next step in his faith journey. And he has asked, Christ in his life, and he wants to get baptized, and he's going to be getting baptized in November. And so I told him, I said, middle school is hard. Middle school's hard. I said, yeah, I'm old. I know it. I said, but middle school was hard. It wasn't even called middle school. It's called junior high. Okay. Yeah. I said, it was hard. It wasn't easy. And I said, I was faced with a lot of stuff when I was your age. And I said, but there are going to be times, especially as you get older, that you are going to be tempted with things to put other things in front of God, to put other things in front of Christ. And I tell this story a lot, even with my kids back in the E-Zone. Like I've talked about this, about how we have to put God first. Like when we make that decision to follow after Christ, we have to put him first. And I was a junior in high school when I played volleyball all through junior high and high school. And my junior year of high school, I'd played for a year before. Like I went to a new high school my 10th grade year. I played, did the same thing 10th grade, same thing 11th grade, same thing, ended up going back 12th grade and playing. But my 11th grade year, I was starting varsity. And as the season progressed, we were a couple weeks into the season, I was getting benched for every single game. I started varsity as a 10th grader, and I was starting varsity as an 11th grader. And now, a fourth of the way through my season, I'm being benched every game. I wasn't starting, and very rarely was I getting to play, and I did not know what was happening or why that was happening.
I do. I remember this story.
Yeah, and so my coach decides to tell my friend Ashley that if I would just attend practice for the full amount on Wednesday nights, then I would play. I literally was leaving 30 minutes early on Wednesday nights to go to church because that was my priority. Going to church was a priority for me. And so I was leaving 30 minutes early for practice, and he was benching me for it. And so I had enough, and my dad and my mom and I had a conversation after a game. We had our games, and I didn't play at all. And so my dad had some words with my coach in the parking lot, and the coach was like, he made comments about me not being there. And my dad was like, she's there every day. She leaves 30 minutes early for practice. Like, this is not okay. You cannot hold this against her. And he's like, well, she's not going to play as long as she continues to miss. And so I made that decision in 11th grade to quit volleyball, which I loved. I loved playing volleyball, but I loved Jesus more.
Yeah.
So I made the decision to quit volleyball, which was probably at that point one of the hardest decisions that I had to make. And I made sure that church and my relationship with God was the most important thing. And I missed playing something awful. Like, I missed it so bad. So my senior year, I decided to go back and play. And I remember my coach going back. I was going back, and I was so nervous. I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know if I want to do this. And Mom's like, no, you want to go. Like, just go play. So I went back, and I told him, I said, listen, I'm going to play again this year. But I'll just let you know I'm leaving on Wednesday nights. And he actually apologized and said that he was sorry that, whatever. And I played my entire senior year, started, and I didn't have any issues my senior year. But I think back on that, and I think for me, like, that was a pivotal moment in my relationship with Christ, because it truly helped me to realize that my relationship with Christ needed to come first. And it's something that when I talk to kids, that's a practical, thing that they can understand.
Yeah.
Of, sports are important for so many families, but God is more important.
Yeah.
This is important, but Christ is more important. This is important,
Yeah.
but Christ is more important than that. And so sometimes, and I've told kids this, sometimes when we make that decision to follow Christ, it's going to come at a cost, and it's going to come at us maybe not getting to play volleyball that we want to play, or us not being friends with those friends that we were friends with for a while. Because maybe they're not the people that God wants in our lives, but God's going to bring new people into our lives. But I think a lot of times just being open and honest and sharing those truths, because I do think that sometimes it is hard to share our stories, especially with kids, because we're like, oh, we don't want kids to know that we experience this, or we don't want kids to know that we experience that. But I can tell you that especially in today's society, our kids are experiencing so many things that we couldn't even begin. I don't think that I, as a 4th, 5th grader, had ever even heard or talked about suicide.
Yeah.
And there are elementary kids that are taking their lives.
Yeah, we were unfortunately introduced to that. I was very, very young, because I had a cousin who ended up dying by suicide. But yeah, I mean, it just does. It's crazy what the kids are going through today, and we can't, no matter how big or how small we may perceive their issue is, they're always big, right, because that's what they're dealing with. That's what they're going through. It's one of the reasons why Jesus taught the importance of children in a lot of his teaching. He just said, no, don't kick them out. Bring them to me. Let them sit up close. Let them hear this. Why do you teach like that, Jesus? He said, well, because I want even the childlike
faith.
Yeah, childlike faith. I want the mind of a child to be able to understand these things.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I've had conversations with kids that have blown my mind. One of the kids that I just recently talked to, I ask the same questions when we have the conversations, the baptism conversations.
Yeah.
And I ask them, have you made the decision to follow after Christ? And then we talk about baptism. And then I normally ask, so tell me, do you have a favorite Bible story or a favorite Bible verse? So I asked this little one a couple weeks ago this question. 5th grade, okay? which she might be 4th grade. Anyways, 4th or 5th grade. I can't remember which grade she's in. But so we have this conversation and I said, so do you have a favorite Bible verse or Bible story? And she's like,
the story of the sword getting stuck in Ehud's belly.
No, that was not hers. But she's like, can I think about it and I'll get back with you? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I said, just let me know by next Sunday. I said, that's fine. Like, it's not a big deal. So I went on into back into big church and she comes up to me after first service and she's like, Jess, I know what my story is. And I was like, okay. I was like, what is it? I said, tell me. And she said, the story of Jesus on the cross. And I was like, okay. And she's like, wait a minute, but not because of why you think. And I was like, okay, what do you mean? And she said, so it's the story of Jesus on the cross, but it's the story of that other guy. And I'm like, what other guy? And she goes, yeah, like there were 2 bad guys on the cross too. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, it's about the one because like, remember he said that like he believed in Jesus and Jesus told him like, today you'll be with me. Like, that's the story. And I said, why that one? And she was like, because like sometimes we're like that other guy, but like we don't always make the right decisions, but Jesus like still died for me and still died for him. And I was like,
come on, preach it,
what
girl.
What just happened right now? I said, girl, you put some thought into that. I was like, you go, girl. Like, that is awesome. And she's like, yeah. She said, I've always just thought about that and how like, that's just really cool because, Jesus wasn't mad at him. He just loved him. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's good. Yeah. And kids do. I mean, they take some, they can hear stories and like we do small groups at the end of class and like having conversations with them about those small groups, like, cause our curriculum also allows for that small group discussion and it has discussion questions and getting to talk to them about some of those stories. And like this past week we talked about fear. And we were like, what are some of the things that you're afraid of? Like, what's your biggest fear? What does that look like? How has God helped you? And so hearing those conversations with them and allowing that relationship to start building for them to be able to open up and really understand, like, God has been there with me through some really tough times. Even when my dog died, like God is still there in those moments. And so, being able to have those conversations that are open and honest with them are just, they're impactful.
For sure. That's good stuff. Good stuff. It is time for
mystery meat. You're welcome.
I'm gonna clip that, and that's what we're gonna use from now on.
Mystery meat.
All right. What's a creative way you have found to incorporate prayer into your everyday life?
I like to call those steering wheel prayers.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. My car. I would say my car is my, it's probably not creative, but that's what I do. Like my car probably has experienced more prayer and tears than anything else. Yeah. But yeah, my car is what gets it the most.
For me, it was, I just got a gut check one day where I think we were doing, I don't know what we were doing early on whenever I got hired here. So this may have been right before you, but we're having a conversation about pray without ceasing. Mm-hmm. And I just got a gut check and I just said, I made a point that day to, before I do anything, whether that is by myself or with the kids, whatever that looks like, before I start anything, I just say a prayer. Mm-hmm. I just say a little prayer. We do it as a worship team. Yeah. We pray before, we pray after. Anytime that we record an episode of the potluck, we say a prayer. Anytime I get in my car and just to my kids see that, like, my eyes will be open, but I'm just kind of like letting them sit there for a minute. Yeah. And I'm just praying in my head, Lord, I've got precious cargo. I just would like to get them to school safely. Just make a way, God. Make, just whatever that prayer looks like. I pray before I eat. I pray before I design something for a sermon series. It's just an easy way, and it has taken years to get to that point. Yeah. Because there are some days where you're just like, it's raining. I just want to be sitting on a couch, and
I find myself at times, especially
being jealous of Terry before she gets a massage.
Right? Rude. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, where was our invite?
I do find myself, especially at nighttime, like when right before, really not just at nighttime. Anytime there's downtime for me. Like if I'm just on Fridays when I'm at home, when we're off on Fridays, if I'm just laying on the couch or whatever, my brain will immediately go to dear Jesus, and just start praying in my head. I just start that. But something else that I have done, and I do quite often, if I have someone that'll reach out to me and say, hey, I'm just in need of prayer, or hey, I'm, can you pray for me? I don't do it all the time, but if I feel that in that moment that it's something that needs to be done, voice memo. I love to send voice memos. But I've had people do that for me, and it is one of my favorite things. I had actually had a voice memo for a long time from Erin Coker. She had sent me a prayer after a refit training, and I kept it for a really long time.
What happened to it?
I think I got a new phone and it didn't transfer over.
I know, before they could transfer stuff over. Yeah,
I got a new phone and it didn't transfer my texts over for some reason. But
way to go, Apple.
I know, rude. But I have seen that.
We're praying for you.
You know how you hear people be like, I'm praying for you. Well, it's easy to say I'm praying for you, and then you go and things you know what I mean? I hate to say that, but you go, you're like, oh, I'm going to pray for you. And then you go on and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to pray for this situation. So I've tried to make it a point to, if I'm telling someone I'm praying for them, either type that prayer out and send it to them immediately, so they know that I'm not just praying for them in the future, but I'm praying for them right now.
Well, it's real easy to do that too, especially if you see somebody post a life update or something, and they're like, I could really use some prayer. And then your comment section is nothing but praying for you, sending lots of love, praying for you.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get done with that, you immediately get back to scrolling.
Yes. And I try to be very intentional with that. In it, because I know how it has helped me. I have had people send me, one of my mentors, her name's Malia, and she has sent me those prayer memos, she'll reach out and say, hey, how you doing today? And I'm like, man, I'm just struggling today. And instantly she'll send me a prayer memo. It's a prayer note, and it's her voice. And she's like, hey, I just want to take a minute and pray for you. And I'm like, oh, I needed that today. Yeah. Thank you. So I enjoy that. I also randomly will sometimes, if I'm in my head a lot, I'll pull out my phone, and on the notes, if I can't verbally get it out of my head, you know what I mean? I'll type it in my notes on my phone. Yeah. Because there are times where I'm my head has so much in it, I can't focus. And then I go back through my notes and I'm like, what in the ADHD is this? What is this?
I've got stuff
random
on my
numbers.
Phone since
and then I'm like, what's it? Oh, I had a prayer written in here. Look at that.
Yeah.
Random stuff.
That's good. I like it. Use your notes.
I do.
And pray for people if you're going to tell them that you pray for them. That's a good way to incorporate more prayer into your life. Well, I enjoyed it. Another good one. A+, 10 out of 10. Would highly recommend. Hey, just like this podcast, every single week. Oh,
the rain is getting to us.
I know. And I'm thinking about lunch too. Got a Totino's pizza waiting for me. Y'all have a good weekend, and we'll see you next Friday for another episode of the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. Thank you so much for listening in with us today. We really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. You can also watch the video version of this on YouTube as well. All you have to do is search up the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. From all of us here, we want to say thank you, and we'll see you next week.